Hello and welcome to Woollen Hearted. This is a podcast about spinning, natural dyeing, weaving and toy making. And I'm filming it in my home in southwest France in the Hautes-Pyrénées, which are the mountains between France and Spain. So how are you? How are you doing? I hope that you're well, I hope that you're safe, I hope that you're coping wherever you are in the world and whatever life looks like at the moment. We're coming up for 2 months of lockdown here in France, and although in some ways we're starting to feel more used to the strange circumstances, this past week has been quite tough for us. We've been struggling a little bit just to find the momentum to keep going and to continue social isolating. I think we're all really missing our friends, we're missing contact with the outside world, and yeah, I think we're sort of flagging somewhat. So I really hope that you're managing where you are, and I especially hope you're managing to find ways to bring little sparks of joy into your life every day. I wanted to film again to share with you some plans for making in the coming weeks that I'm really excited about, and also to show you a little bit of what I've been working on in the dye pots recently. So over the weekend I got my dye pots out and I got all my dyeing equipment and materials out, my dye stuffs and my mordanting materials, and I had a little play with some colour. I began by mordanting 25 grams of handspun wool, the wool I showed you last, handspun yarn, which was from wool, which I showed you last week, and also some squares of silk. So altogether I had about 35 grams in my dye pot, so quite a small amount, just to get me back into the process of dyeing and to really concentrate on getting the colours how I want them to be. So I began by mordanting the fibre, and mordanting is the preparation stage that happens between scouring, which is when you wash whatever you are planning to dye, just to get all external residues and anything which could stop the dye stuff sticking in colour to the fibre. So I had already scoured my fibre, and I then proceeded to mordant it. So I was using alum, which is a type of salt made from aluminium, or it's kind of in the family of aluminiums, and it's traditionally used in natural dyeing as a mordant. And a mordant is the material that you kind of coat the fibre in before you dye, because the majority of natural dyes don't stick on, their colour doesn't stay onto the fibre otherwise. And mordant comes from some Latin word which I don't know, but we have a word very similar to it in French, which is mordre, which means to bite. So I like to think of it as helping the colour bite onto the fibre. So I first did a bath of alum, which in French is pierre d'Alain, and then I proceeded to dye immediately, because you don't need to let the fibre dry, you can dye straight away. So I then prepared a bath of Weld. I decided to begin with yellow, and I talked about Weld last time. The socks I'm making for my son at the moment have the cuffs and the heel with a detail in Weld yellow. So I prepared the dye bath in a similar way to making a, I think it's a concoction, I'm just trying to think of the words in English. I put the dye stuff, which was dried Weld, into a muslin bag, and then I slowly brought that up to simmering about 80 degrees. And then I added my prepared fibre to the dye bath, and it then was bubbling on a low heat for well over an hour. and then I let it steep overnight so that as much colour as possible would go into the fibre, and then the next day I rinsed and washed the dye out. So this is my first bath of Weld, and it's when you do natural dyeing, the intensity of the colour depends on what percentage of raw fibre, dry fibre to raw dye materials you use. So this is 100%. I had about 35 grams of fibre, and so I made the bath with 35 grams of Weld. So this is the result on the wool. It's come out this beautiful, very, very bright daffodil yellow, which I'm really chuffed with. It's actually a little bit more intense than the wool I had shown you last time. So that was the hand spun. And then I also dyed some squares of silk, which these are going to be play silks for my children. So one has already been used quite a lot. And it's quite interesting to note that although they both went into the same dye pot, the colour is not as intense, and that is because this is silk, and the silk takes up the Weld in a different way to the wool. So generally protein-based fibres, so wool and silk and mohair or alpaca, take up the dye most intensely, natural dyes, with silk being a little bit less intense, and then plant-based fibres like linen or cotton or I'm trying to think what's chanvre, hemp. They take the same dye colour. They're a bit more muted. So it's been really fun to dye with the two different fibre sources, just to see the difference. And what I'm gonna next do is I've kept what's left of the dye bath, and I've put it into glass jars with lids on, and when I next do a dye bath, I'm going to use the same bath again, and it will be an exhaust bath, so the colour should hopefully be a little bit less intense than of this yellow, but it will still be quite strong, and I'll maybe do it 2 more times, so then I'll have an increasingly lighter yellow to play with. And I thought that would be really nice for using later when I over dye it with indigo to obtain greens. I thought it might be the way to obtain a lighter, sort of more muted green tone. But we'll see. It's all an experiment, and something that I am going to try to do from now on is to begin a natural dye notebook where I'll keep little samples of, I won't be able to do samples of this because I don't want to cut into it, but with my wool, and write down the recipes and keep a good record, because I want to be able to reproduce these colours at a future date, and to know that, well, 100% of Weld on wool will make a really, really bright yellow. In another dye bath I might just do 50% to see of the first dye bath. There's all different things that you can tweak and experiment with, but I know it's easy to forget what you've done when you come back to it in the future, so that's the advantage of having a dye notebook. But yeah, I'm really pleased with how this has turned out, and I'm looking forward, particularly with the play silks, to make some more over the coming weeks. My son has been playing so much with this big one. He's been using it as a cape, and as a tent, and as a hammock, and yeah, it's really fun to see how much creativity can come from just a piece of fabric, and the silk just makes it really soft and flowing and lovely drape. So it's going to be fun over the coming weeks and months to make a whole set of different play silks, naturally dyed play silks for the 2 children. Since last week I've also done a really tiny bit of spinning. I just finished off spinning the singles of the Lourdes fleece for the next 25 grams little fingering weight ball of yarn, which will then go into the next dye pot. So this is the yarn as the singles, and what I'm actually going to do is ply from either end of this centre pull ball, which some spinners will be horrified by. It's sort of a matter of quite a lot of debate in the spinning world whether it's a good idea to do that, because it can disrupt the twist, but I'm not really too worried at the moment about the overall sort of structure of the yarn, because I'm not, for example, making socks or a garment from this. This is very much some experimental to see how it spins up and how it dyes up with a natural dye. So that was how I made this little ball. I spun the 25 grams and then centre pull, applied it with from the centre pull ball. So it's really great to see the contrast of the weld and the natural undyed wool. So I'll apply this up hopefully in the next couple of days, and then perhaps at the weekend I'll be able to dye again. The last thing I want to talk about today is that we're on the last day of April as I record this, and so tomorrow, the 1st of May, is the start of the Magic 3 make-along, which I talked about a couple of episodes ago. It's a make-along hosted by my friend Mimi in Berlin, who's known as Liebwed on Instagram, and she has the Yarn Chicks podcast. And this make-along is when we get together and we make things for the small people in our lives, and you don't have to be a parent to join in. You can be an aunt or a neighbour to small children, or it could be a child that you work with, and we make them 3 items, so a top, something on the bottom, and then a toy. And I'm really excited to get started this year, because I have a lot of yarn that I've sort of gathered up over the years since I was pregnant with my son that I've never got around to knitting with, and I really want to try to use it now in the coming months to knit some things, probably for my daughter, because there's probably not quite enough yarn to make big boy size things. My son is nearly 5, but we're starting to put him in a 6 to 8 year old's clothes, so yeah, I will make something, a little set for him. I've started making him a pair of socks, so that'll be the bottoms. I might just make him either a scarf or a hat for the top, and I need to think what I'm gonna make him for a toy. I haven't quite decided. I think some of the making will involve the play silks, because he's asked me to make him a red and a purple cape as well, so I'll be using the madder and the Brazil wood? No, bois de compêche. I'm struggling to find my words in English today. Can't remember what that one is, but it makes purple. It's a hardwood. It's not Brazil wood. Oh, I can't remember. I'll put it in English underneath. Anyway, so I'm going to begin by working on a set for my little girl, because she's going to be 1 in about 6 weeks' time. And I fell in love with the pattern, the Sunny Lou dress by Annie Roden, when I was pregnant with my son. I didn't know if we were having a little boy or a little girl. And so I've had that pattern for 6 years, and I've never had the opportunity to make one. So I thought it would be really nice, because of the sizing. It only goes up to age 18 months, I think, is the biggest. And I thought it would be really nice to make a little dress for my daughter for around her first birthday. And so I didn't want to make it out of wool, I wanted to make it out of linen. And I looked into some different options, and then I remembered that the French young company de Rerem Natura makes French linen yarn. So over the weekend I had a look on their website because I knew that they were shipping again, only in France, and I was torn between two colourways. One was a sort of light forget-me-not blue and the other was a sort of dark purple, and I really struggled to pick between the two. I sort of 1 minute thought I wanted the blue and then I wanted the dark purple, and so I put up a little poll on my Instagram stories to see if people could help me decide, and it was 50-50. So in the end I brought both. It's a little bit of an extravagance. The yarn produced by De Rerum Natura is of a fantastic quality. It's really beautifully sourced. The colours are well thought out. It's spun beautifully. She has a variety of yarn weights and of compositions of the fibres. I think it's mainly wool, but I think there might be some blends, possibly one with silk. And she has some yarns that are worsted spun and some yarns that are woolen spun. So it's a young company that I really admire and that I think does a lot of really good things for the French wool industry and promoting French wool abroad. She tries to source locally. She really thinks about the lady, Solène, behind De Rerum Natura. She really thinks about where her wool is coming from. I think it's mainly French merino, so Merino Starle, which is the yarn breed which I believe originates from Provence. But she also has a yarn that is 100% French flax or linen, and so these are the two colours. It's the Antigone Antigone base, and so this is the blue, which is called Mistral. So Mistral is the wind that you have in Provence. So it says fil de lin peigné issu de l'agriculture biologique. So it's worsted combed linen from organic flax, and it says actually that it comes from France and the Netherlands. So yeah, so it's not entirely French, but I think it's quite difficult to get 100% French linen actually. So it says ces longues fibres sont filées en mouillé pour accroître leur douceur et conserver leur brillance naturelle. Il est filé en Italie près de Vérone et en France dans le Creuse. So it says that it's worsted spun, and it's spun in a damp way, which is how when you spin linen you have to dampen the fibre to conserve its softness and its natural sheen. And I have to say this one particularly has got a beautiful shine on it, this lovely blue. So that's the Mistral colourway, and I've got two balls of that. So it's 100 grams and there's about 260 meters per ball. And something I find really interesting is it's quite dense. It feels quite heavy, even though it's only 100 grams. And I think it's both the fact that it's linen and that it's worsted spun. And then this is the other colourway, which is called Prunelle. And it's this beautiful dark kind of purpley blue. So I've also got two balls of that. So the plan is that I'm going to knit the Sunny Lou dress in the Prunelle colourway, and Prunelle is the name for the wild plum tree, or I think in English we call it the slow fruit, so like when you make sloe gin. And it's also the fruit that the French use in their version of the expression the apple of someone's eye, so la prunelle de ses yeux, which is really lovely. Yeah, so that's the Prunelle colourway, and then that's the Mistral. And so I'm intending to knit a Sunny Lou dress with this one, and then a cardigan with this one to go over the top. And it's a sports weight, so I'm torn between two patterns, one of which is the Willet cardigan and the other one I've forgotten the name of, but I'm going to start with the dress first and then I'll see which cardigan I make after that. And so it's going to be quite a new experience for me to be knitting with plant-based fibres. I've never knit with linen before, but it's something I've been wanting to try for a long time, partly because I'd really like to spin my own linen from flax. I've tried a tiny bit before, but I found it quite difficult at the time because I wasn't very used to the worsted drawer, which I've talked about in previous podcasts. I've really spent some time practicing since last year. So yeah, I'm really excited to see how this knits up, and I can't wait to get started tomorrow. I'm going to cast on the dress tomorrow evening, and I'll look forward to sharing the progress on that later on. And so the other thing that I'm intending to make for my daughter over the coming months is the Sea Spray Pullover by Chrissy, and it's going to be using yarn from Stash, which I've had a very, very long time. It's this Roden summer tweed. So as you can see, I'm quite into the sort of forget-me-not blues. So this is a mixture of 70% silk and 30% cotton, and this was the one and only time I've brought any yarn from Roden. I brought this when I was pregnant with our son, because the wool shop that I grew up with in my hometown was closing down, and so they had a massive sale at the Christmas time, just when I was visiting my family, and I made the most of the sale and stocked up on some different yarns which I was intending to knit into things for my baby, but I never got round to doing. So I have 5 skeins of this. I have 2 already balled up, and then I have a contrasting sort of oatmeal coloured. So I'm intending, it's an Aran weight, and I'm intending to make the sea spray sweater with the contrast stripes in the oatmeal, and I'll maybe do contrast ribbing because I've got plenty of yarn. I've got 2 skeins of this one. And then if there's any left, I don't know, because I'm going to try and make it as big as possible, so it might not be for this coming summer, it maybe be for in a couple of summers time, but I thought it would be a really good way of using up some yarn from Stash. So yeah, that's about all for this week. Lots of plans, not a lot has been finished, but lots of plans, lots of excitement about up and coming make-alongs, and yeah, I'm looking forward to starting something new. I haven't done any more work on my jumper, on my blanket, and I haven't made any more bears this week because I've not been feeling too well, and so I've been going to bed quite early in the evening. But yeah, I'm looking forward to starting making again and working on some new projects. So I want to wish you a really good end to your week, and I look forward to seeing you again really soon. Stay safe, stay happy, and thank you for spending this time with me. Take care. Bye bye.